In this PowerPoint, we are going to cover Chapter 2 on formulas and functions in Excel. So the first thing we're going to look at is copying a formula. Excel uses 3 different ways to reference a cell in a formula, and the 3 ways are relative, absolute, and mixed. So before you decide which one to use when you're copying formulas, ask yourself, do the cell references contain constant or variable values? And should the cell references be adjusted, or should they always refer to the same cell location, regardless of where the copied formula is located? So let's go take a look at relative. A relative cell reference is a default method for referencing in Excel. So regardless of wherever you paste your formula, the cell references in the copied formula is going to maintain the same relative distance from the cell containing the copied formula. So what does that mean? Okay, so let's go take a look at an example. Okay, so let's say if I go in H3, okay, equals, okay, is going to be, let's say it'll be John's grade here. Okay, so it is referencing, what is this referencing here? E3. Okay, so it's referencing E3, which is I'm in H3 right now, so it's 1, 2, 3 columns away. Okay, so the formula is referencing the data that is 3 columns to the left, right? So when I click and drag this, okay, H4 is going to reference 3 columns to the left as well, which would be GFE4, okay? And likewise, it will be E5, okay? And this is the same, it doesn't have to be in the H column. It's the same if you even start down here. Okay, if I start in G and I go equals E3, so it's going to reference something that is, so I'm in G8 and it's going to reference something that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows up and 1 column to the left. Okay, so again, if I click and drag that down, this is going to reference E4, and this would reference E5, and so on. So that's what I mean about keeping the same relative distance. So the relative distance would be 5 rows up and 1 row over to the left. All right, let's get back to our PowerPoint here. Oops. The next we're going to look at is absolute values. So in many calculations, there are times in which a value should remain constant, such as like an interest rate or a payoff date. Those dates, you don't want them to change. You want to always reference with that. So in these situations, the absolute cell references are used. An absolute cell reference provides a constant reference to a specific cell. So an absolute cell reference is going to appear with a $ before both the column and the column letter and the row number. So it would look like this. So if B4 is the absolute reference, I have a $B and $4. Right, so let's go take a look at that. I'm just gonna clear this. Right, so if for some reason A10 should be the absolute reference. So A10 is going to be 50%. Okay, so 50% is sort of like the absolute, let's say that's a course weight. Okay, course weight. And I want the final score to times 50%. So here I'm going to go equals final score times, okay, 50%. So it's going to be 50% of 85. Now I want 50% to be constant. So as I drag this down, I want, E4 to times 50%, E5 to times 50%, E6 to times 50%, E7 to times 50%. So if I just drag it down like this, it becomes a 0. And now why does it do that? Let's take a look. It does that because, E4 is relative, and what I have here, A10 was also relative. A11 is also a relative value. So if I go here, I'm just going to show you E3 is a relative. So it's always going to look 2 columns over for that value, okay, in E3. And then it's going to times A10, which is this. That's fine. But the next time, that formula is copied over, it's going to look at 2 columns over, right, E4. And then it's going to look at A11 because it's going to move down just like it moves down for the final score. And here's so on. Then you have E5 times E12. A12. And you have E6 times E13 and so on. So how do you make this one a constant? How do you make that one a constant is actually you have to, let me just go and clear all this. Clear. So you actually have to go to the first one and make A10 constant so that that value doesn't change. So to make it constant, you have to add a $ before the A and add a $ before the 10. Okay, so nothing changes for that, but when we drag it down, finally that works. Okay, and let's go see what the equation is. So now it becomes E4, right, times 50%. Okay, so that doesn't change because this is an absolute reference. Absolute reference always references A10, okay? Always references A10, even if you go down the row here. All right? Oops, so next, we'll take a look at mixed cell reference. So in mixed cell reference, you combine an absolute cell reference with a relative cell reference. So $B4 and $4 are examples of mixed cell reference. So to create a mixed cell reference, type the $ to the left part of the cell reference you want to be absolute. So what this means is it'll always be in the B column, but the row will change, but the B column will never change, okay? Or the column may change, okay? The column will become relative, but the row will always be 4. It will not change.